Generation Z versus Generation X. The TikTokers mocked the old cemetery groundskeeper, calling him a boomer, until they learned he was actually a Vietnam veteran with 3 Purple Hearts. From that moment on, social media was used in a way they never expected. Welcome to Storyline Universe. Before we dive into this powerful story about respect, social media, and the lessons that change everything, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories about bridging generational gaps deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. These moments teach us what really matters. Rolling Hills Memorial Cemetery, Suburban, Virginia, October 12, 2024. Tyler Chen adjusted his phone mount for the 3rd time, making sure the cemetery's pristine rows of white headstones were perfectly framed in the background. At 17, Tyler had built a TikTok following of 2.3 million by creating increasingly bold content that pushed boundaries and generated engagement. "Okay, guys, this is going to be epic," Tyler announced to his crew. Madison, 16, 800K followers. Derek, 18, 1.1 million followers. And Chloe, 17,900K followers, gathered around him, all holding their phones and checking their appearances. "What's the challenge again?" Madison asked, applying lip gloss while live streaming her preparation to her Instagram stories. "It's called Sacred Space Shuffle," Tyler explained. "We do the trending dance routine in the most serious, quiet places we can find. Libraries, churches, and now," he gestured dramatically at the cemetery, "here." Derek was already practicing the dance moves, a combination of arm waves, hip swivels, and jumps that had been viral for the past month. "This is going to break the internet. Nobody's been bold enough to do it in a cemetery yet." Chloe looked slightly uncomfortable. "Are we sure this is okay? I mean, it's a military cemetery. These are like actual dead soldiers." Tyler rolled his eyes. "Chloe, it's 2024. Everything's content. Besides, they're dead. They're not going to care. And the contrast between the serious setting and our fun energy is exactly what makes it viral." What they didn't notice was the man watching them from behind the maintenance shed, his weathered hands gripping a rake a little too tightly. Harold Thompson had been the head groundskeeper at Rolling Hills Memorial Cemetery for 15 years. At 73, he moved more slowly than he used to, but his dedication to maintaining the sacred space had never wavered. Every headstone was perfectly aligned, every blade of grass meticulously trimmed, every flag properly positioned. Harold had seen many things during his tenure: grieving families, honor guard ceremonies, quiet visitors paying respects to fallen heroes. But he'd never seen anything like what was happening today. 4 teenagers had set up what appeared to be filming equipment near Section 7, where Vietnam veterans were buried. Harold recognized the setup from his granddaughter's explanations about social media. They were planning to make a video. Harold approached them slowly, his work boots crunching softly on the gravel path. He'd dealt with disrespectful visitors before, usually with patience and understanding. Most people just needed a gentle reminder about the solemnity of the space. "Excuse me," Harold said quietly, his voice carrying the slight rasp of someone who'd smoked too many cigarettes in his youth. "Can I help you folks with something?" Tyler looked up from his phone setup with barely concealed annoyance. "We're fine, thanks. Just making some content." "Content?" Harold's brow furrowed. "This is a cemetery, son. A place of rest for American servicemen and women." Madison giggled. "Okay, boomer. We're not hurting anyone. It's just a dance video." Harold felt something cold settle in his chest. "A dance video? Here? Look, old man." Derek stepped forward, using his height to tower over Harold. "We have every right to be here. It's a public space. Why don't you go back to mowing grass or whatever it is you do?" Chloe tugged at Derek's sleeve. "Maybe we should—" "No," Tyler interrupted, sensing an opportunity. "Actually, this is perfect. Having the cranky old groundskeeper in the background will make the video even more viral. Keep recording, Madison." Harold stood very still for a moment, looking at these young people who saw his sacred workplace as nothing more than a backdrop for their entertainment. He thought about the names carved into the stones around them. Jimmy Rodriguez, who died at 19 in the Mekong Delta. Tommy Williams, who'd made it home but never recovered from his wounds. Marcus Johnson, Harold's own squad leader, who'd saved Harold's life twice before taking shrapnel that Harold should have taken. "Son," Harold said quietly, "I'm going to ask you one more time to show some respect. These aren't props for your video. These are heroes." Tyler smirked. "Heroes? Dude, half these guys probably died for nothing in some pointless war. We're just trying to bring some life to this depressing place." That's when Harold made his decision. "You want to make content about this place?" Harold asked, his voice taking on a different quality, calmer, but with an edge that made Chloe step back instinctively. "Let me help you make some real content." Harold pulled out his own phone, a newer model than the teenagers expected him to have, and opened the camera app. "What are you doing?" Tyler demanded. "I'm going to tell you about some of the men buried here. And you're going to listen, because if you want to dance on their graves, you should at least know who they were." Madison was still recording, partly out of confusion and partly because the interaction was getting interesting from a content perspective. Harold walked to the nearest headstone. "This is Corporal James Mitchell, died May 15, 1968 at age 20. Want to know how?" Tyler crossed his arms defiantly. "Not really." "James was a medic," Harold continued, ignoring Tyler's response. "His squad was pinned down by enemy fire for 6 hours. He made 4 trips into the kill zone to drag wounded soldiers to safety. On the 5th trip, he took a sniper round to the chest. He lived long enough to save 1 more life before he bled out." Harold moved to the next stone. "This is Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, first woman in this section. Killed by an IED in Afghanistan while leading an evacuation of wounded soldiers. She was 24, engaged to be married." Chloe had stopped filming and was actually listening now, but Tyler was growing impatient. "Look, this is very sad and all, but—" "You called me a boomer," Harold interrupted. "You want to know what this boomer did when he was your age?" Harold began walking down the row of headstones, his pace steady and purposeful. The teenagers found themselves following, drawn by something in his voice they couldn't quite identify. "I was 19 when I landed in Vietnam. December 1970. I thought I knew everything, just like you do. I thought the older generation didn't understand my generation, just like you do." Harold stopped at a headstone that was slightly larger than the others, with fresh flowers placed at its base. "This is Staff Sergeant Marcus Johnson, my squad leader. The man who taught me that respect isn't something you give when it's convenient. It's something you show because it's right." Harold sat down on a small stone bench near the headstone, his movements careful but dignified. The teenagers remained standing, but their aggressive postures had softened. "Marcus was 22 when I met him. Ancient from my perspective. He'd already done 2 tours. Lost half his original squad, seen things that would break most people. But he never lost his humanity." Harold's voice took on the rhythm of someone who'd told this story before, but not often, and not to strangers. "Our first mission together, I was scared out of my mind, shaking so bad I could barely hold my rifle. The other guys in the squad were making jokes, calling me names, saying I wouldn't last a week." Madison found herself lowering her phone slightly, actually listening to the story. "Marcus pulled me aside and said, 'Son, fear doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. What makes you weak is letting fear stop you from doing what's right.' Then he asked me about my family, my hometown, my dreams. He made me remember that I was more than just my fear." Harold gestured to the headstone. 3 months later, we were on patrol when we hit an ambush. Marcus took shrapnel from a mortar round, but he kept fighting, kept leading, kept protecting his men, all of us. Derek shifted uncomfortably. Did he make it? He made it through that firefight, got us all home safe. But the shrapnel had done internal damage that the medics couldn't fix completely. He died 6 months later in a field hospital. Harold stood up slowly, his joints protesting. Before he died, Marcus told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Harold, when people disrespect what we've done here, it's not because they're bad people. It's because they don't understand. Your job is to help them understand, not to hate them for not knowing." Tyler felt something he hadn't expected, shame. We didn't know. No, Harold agreed. You didn't, but now you do. Harold began walking again, this time toward the cemetery's administrative building. The teenagers followed, no longer filming, no longer thinking about content creation. "You want to know what's really viral?" Harold asked. "Not dancing on graves, not disrespecting the dead for views. It's understanding that every person buried here was someone's child, someone's hope, someone's future." He stopped at a memorial wall covered with photographs and service records. "This wall has pictures of every person buried in this cemetery, their stories, their families, their sacrifices." Chloe was the first to approach the wall, reading the descriptions under the photographs. "There are so many of them." "Over 2,000, Harold confirmed. "From World War II to Afghanistan. Different wars, different generations, but they all shared one thing. They put service above self." Madison had been quiet for several minutes, but now she spoke up. "Mr. Thompson, Harold Thompson. Mr. Thompson, were you in Vietnam with these men?" Harold nodded. "2 tours, 1970 to 1972. I came home. A lot of good men didn't." Tyler looked at Harold with new eyes, seeing past the work clothes and aged features to the young soldier he'd once been. "What was it like?" "Terrifying, heartbreaking, but also—" Harold paused, searching for the right words. "It taught me what really matters. It's not how many followers you have or how many likes you get. It's how you treat people, especially people who can't do anything for you in return." Derek looked back toward the section where they'd planned to film their dance video. "Those men, they can't do anything for anyone anymore." "Exactly," Harold said. "Which is why showing them respect is one of the purest forms of honor. You're not doing it for reward or recognition. You're doing it because it's right." Harold led them to a quiet section of the cemetery where a Memorial Day ceremony had taken place earlier that year. Folding chairs were still arranged in neat rows, facing a small stage where speakers had honored the fallen. "Every Memorial Day, families come here," Harold explained. "Children who never met their grandfathers, widows in their 80s who still miss their husbands, parents who buried their children." Madison wiped her eyes, surprised to find herself crying. "I never thought about that." "Most people don't," Harold said gently. "It's not your fault. But now that you know, what are you going to do with that knowledge?" Tyler sat down in one of the folding chairs, his phone forgotten in his pocket. "We were going to make fun of this place. We were going to dance on their graves for views." "But you didn't," Harold pointed out. "When you learned the truth, you stopped. That says something about who you really are." Chloe had been reading more memorial plaques, her voice breaking as she spoke. "Mr. Thompson, how do we fix this? How do we make up for what we almost did?" Harold smiled for the first time since they'd met. "You use your platform for something better. You help other people understand what you've learned today." Derek looked up sharply. "You want us to make videos about this?" I want you to make videos about respect, about history, about the real people behind these headstones. If you're going to have millions of followers, use that influence to teach, not just to entertain." Tyler stood up, decision crystallizing in his mind. "Mr. Thompson, would you help us? Would you tell their stories on camera so we can share them?" Harold studied the young man's face, seeing genuine remorse and genuine desire to do better. "On one condition, we do this right. No trending dances, no flashy editing, just truth." Over the next 3 hours, Tyler, Madison, Derek, and Chloe created the most important content of their lives. Instead of dancing on graves, they sat quietly as Harold told the stories of the men and women buried in Rolling Hills Memorial Cemetery. Madison filmed Harold explaining the meaning behind the different types of headstones, the significance of the flags, and the importance of Memorial Day versus Veterans Day. Derek recorded Harold reading the names of soldiers who died in his unit, his voice steady despite the emotion clearly visible in his eyes. Chloe documented the maintenance work Harold did every day, replacing flags, cleaning headstones, ensuring that every detail was perfect for the families who would visit. Tyler created a video explaining how their original plan had been wrong, how they'd learned about respect from a man they'd initially dismissed as just an old groundskeeper. "This is Harold Thompson," Tyler said to his camera, with Harold's permission to use his name. "We thought he was just a boomer who didn't understand our generation. Turns out, he understands everything. He's a Vietnam veteran who's spent 15 years taking care of this cemetery, making sure every fallen hero is honored." Harold appeared on camera for the first time, his weathered face calm and dignified. "I don't want these young people to feel bad about their initial plan. I want them to understand that when you have a platform, you have a responsibility. You can use it to tear down or to build up. Today, they chose to build up." Tyler posted his video at 8 p.m. that evening with the caption, "We came here to dance on graves. Instead, we learned about heroes. Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for teaching us what respect really means." The video exploded across social media platforms within hours, but this time, the virality was different. Instead of mockery or controversy, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Comments poured in. "This made me cry. Thank you for sharing Mr. Thompson's story. I'm a veteran and this means everything to me. Going to visit my local cemetery this weekend to pay respects. Tyler, this is your best content ever." Madison's video about Harold's daily routine got 15 million views in 2 days. Derek's recording of Harold reading the names became a memorial in itself, shared by families of fallen soldiers across the country. Chloe's documentation of cemetery maintenance inspired a nationwide movement of young people volunteering at local veteran cemeteries. But the most powerful response came from Harold's own family. His granddaughter, Sarah, called him in tears after seeing the videos. "Grandpa, I had no idea. You never told us about your service, about what you do every day at the cemetery. I'm so proud of you." Harold had kept his military service private for decades, sharing those memories only with his wife before she passed away. But seeing young people use social media to honor instead of mock had given him hope for the future. 3 months later, Rolling Hills Memorial Cemetery had become a destination for respectful remembrance rather than inappropriate content creation. Young people from across the country visited to pay their respects, often bringing flowers or small American flags. Tyler, Madison, Derek, and Chloe had transformed their content strategy entirely. Their channels now featured educational content about military history, interviews with veterans, and awareness campaigns for veteran support organizations. Tyler's follower count had actually increased to 3.2 million, but more importantly, his engagement had become more meaningful. Instead of shallow entertainment, his content inspired civic responsibility and historical awareness. Harold had become an unexpected social media celebrity, though he preferred to call himself an educator. Schools began inviting him to speak about Vietnam and the importance of honoring service members. Mr. Thompson, a high school student, asked during one of his presentations, "What's the most important thing young people should know about veterans?" Harold thought carefully before answering, "That we're not asking for worship or special treatment, we're asking for understanding. Every veteran carries stories, some beautiful, some heartbreaking, all important. When you take time to listen to those stories, you honor not just us, but the people who didn't make it home." The Rolling Hills Memorial Cemetery now hosted monthly Stories of Service events, where veterans could share their experiences with young people. Harold had helped create a bridge between generations that had seemed impossible just months earlier. On a quiet Sunday morning, Harold walked through the cemetery as he had for 15 years. But now, he wasn't alone. Tyler, Madison, Derek, and Chloe had become regular volunteers, helping with maintenance and learning about the people buried there. "Mr. Thompson," Madison asked as she placed fresh flowers on Marcus Johnson's grave, "do you think Sergeant Johnson would be proud of what we're doing?" Harold smiled, imagining his old squad leader's reaction to teenagers using social media to honor fallen soldiers. Marcus always believed that understanding was more powerful than judgment. "I think he'd be amazed at how far we've all come." Tyler was filming an educational video about proper flag etiquette at grave sites, his tone respectful and informative. Derek was helping a Gold Star mother locate her son's grave, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine compassion. Chloe had started a scholarship fund for children of fallen soldiers, using her platform to raise awareness and donations. "The funny thing is," Derek said as they finished their volunteer work for the day, "we got more views from the respectful content than we ever would have from the stupid dance video." "That's not the funny thing," Harold corrected gently. "The important thing is that those views now mean something. You're not just entertaining people, you're educating them, inspiring them, connecting them to something bigger than themselves." As the teenagers packed up their filming equipment, Harold remained in the cemetery for a few extra minutes, as he always did. He walked to Marcus Johnson's grave and stood quietly, the way he had every Sunday for 15 years. "Well, Marcus," he said softly, "I think you'd be proud of those kids. They reminded me that your lesson was right. People aren't bad because they don't understand. They just need someone to help them learn." Harold looked out over the perfectly maintained rows of white headstones, each representing a life of service and sacrifice. Thanks to 4 teenagers who'd learned the difference between content and meaning, those stories would continue to be told for generations to come. 1 year later, the Rolling Hills Challenge had become a positive social media movement. Instead of dancing in inappropriate places, young content creators visited cemeteries, museums, and memorial sites to create educational content about history and service. Harold Thompson had written a book called Stories from the Stones, A Groundskeeper's Guide to Honor, which became a bestseller and required reading in many high school history classes. Tyler, Madison, Derek, and Chloe had all received Congressional Youth Leadership Awards for their use of social media to promote civic engagement and historical awareness. But perhaps most importantly, a generation gap had been bridged through mutual respect and understanding. Young people learned to appreciate the sacrifices of previous generations, while older Americans learned to see the potential for positive change in social media and youth culture. Harold still worked at Rolling Hills Memorial Cemetery, But now he had help from dozens of young volunteers who'd learned that true influence comes not from followers or likes, but from using your voice to honor those who can no longer speak for themselves. So now I ask you, how do you use your platform, whether it's social media or just your daily interactions? Have you ever misjudged someone from a different generation? Share how you've learned to bridge those gaps in the comments. Because here at Storyline Universe, we believe that respect is universal. Understanding is possible at any age, and the most viral content is often the content that brings us together rather than drives us apart. Thank you for watching. If this story about generational understanding and the power of respectful communication moved you, subscribe to Storyline Universe. We're here to remind you that every generation has something valuable to teach and something important to learn. And remember, before you create content anywhere, ask yourself, am I building up or tearing down? The answer might just change everything.